The library was almost empty that afternoon. Outside, the sky was heavy with rain, drops hitting the glass windows in a rhythm that made everything feel quieter. Armand sat in the corner seat, books scattered in front of him, but his eyes weren't moving over the words anymore. He was the kind of man who carried silence with him. His classmates often said he was too serious, too distant, but only he knew the reason. He had grown up watching his father work double shifts, his mother stitch clothes till midnight. Armand had promised himself that one day, his family would live with dignity, without counting every rupee. Mirab entered the library with her usual storm-like energy. Her dupatta was slightly wet from the rain, and a smile danced on her face as if the weather itself had whispered a secret only she could understand. She wasn't the kind to stay quiet. Her friends often laughed, saying she could fill any silence with her chatter. But today, she was alone, holding a pile of notes in her arms, struggling to balance them. As she walked past Armand's table, one notebook slipped and fell near his chair. Armand, almost mechanically, bent down, picked it up, and extended it toward her. Their eyes met. For a second, everything else blurred, the rain outside, the books, even the ticking of the wall clock. It was just two strangers staring at each other, and an unexplainable stillness in between. "Thank you," Mirab said softly, her voice breaking the spell. "You just saved my entire semester. If I lost these notes, I would have failed for sure." Armand gave a small nod. "Careful next time." That was it. No dramatic introduction, no forced conversation. Just a simple exchange. But when Mirab smiled before walking away, something stirred in Armand's chest. He didn't understand it, but it was enough to leave him unsettled the entire evening. Later, as he walked home through the rain, his mind kept replaying her smile. Why do I remember it so clearly? He wondered. He didn't even know her name, yet the memory stayed with him as if it belonged. Mirab, on the other hand, didn't think much of it. For her, it was just a stranger being kind. But kindness has its own way of planting seeds unnoticed. The rain outside stopped that night. But in Armand's heart, something had just begun, something he couldn't yet name. And fate had only shown its first card. The next morning, Armand walked into the university with his usual calmness. His routine was simple: attend classes, sit quietly, listen, take notes, and leave. He never believed in wasting time with unnecessary talks or mingling with groups. But today, as he entered the lecture hall, his eyes searched the room unconsciously. He didn't even realize it himself, but he was hoping to see her. And there she was, Mirab. Sitting in the third row, surrounded by friends, her laughter echoing across the hall like music. She was waving her hands animatedly, telling some story. Everyone around her seemed lighter, happier. Armand couldn't help but notice how different she was from him. She carried life in her voice, he carried silence in his eyes. During the lecture, fate played its trick again. The professor announced a new group project. Students were randomly paired, and when the list was read, Armand's name came, right next to Mirab's. Mirab turned to him, her eyes lighting up. "So, Mr. Silent, looks like we're partners now." Armand blinked, a little surprised at her straightforwardness. "Armand," he said quietly. "That's my name." "Mirab," she replied with a grin, extending her hand as if it were the most natural thing to do. Armand hesitated for a second, then shook it. Her hand was warm, soft, and strangely comforting. From that day, their meetings became routine. Library sessions, discussion over notes, endless cups of chai in the canteen. Mirab would talk endlessly about her dreams, how she wanted to travel, write stories, make her parents proud. Armand mostly listened. But whenever he did speak, his words were precise, thoughtful. And Mirab began to notice that his silences weren't empty, they were full of meaning. One afternoon, as they sat under the old banyan tree near the campus, Mirab laughed while sharing a childhood memory. Armand just watched her, quietly, the corners of his lips curving into the faintest smile. "Why don't you ever laugh properly?" she teased, nudging him. Armand looked at her for a long moment and replied softly, "Because I don't find many things worth laughing at." Mirab tilted her head, curious. "And me? Am I worth laughing at?" For the first time, Armand let out a small laugh. A real one. It wasn't loud, but it was enough to make Mirab's heart skip. Something unspoken had started to grow between them. Neither admitted it, neither named it. But in their small exchanges, in the way their eyes lingered a little longer, in the way time slipped faster around each other, something invisible was binding them. That night, Armand lay awake in his room. He told himself it was just friendship, nothing more. But deep down, a question kept haunting him. Why does she feel like the missing part of me? And somewhere, Mirab too stared at her ceiling, smiling unknowingly at the memory of his half-smile. Neither of them knew it yet, but the bond was no longer just friendship. It was something neither could deny, even if they tried. It was a breezy evening on campus. The sky had just turned orange, and the wind carried the faint scent of rain. Students were scattered around, some chatting, some rushing to hostels. Armand and Mirab were walking toward the old banyan tree, their usual spot. Mirab had been quieter than usual all day, which was strange. Armand noticed it but didn't ask right away. He never forced her words. Finally, as they sat down, Mirab looked at him, her eyes searching. "Armand," she began, hesitating, "can I ask you something personal?" He glanced at her, curious. "You always do." She took a deep breath. "Why do you spend so much time with me? I mean, you're not exactly the friendly type. You don't talk to anyone else this much." Armand was silent for a long moment. His fingers played with a fallen leaf on the ground. He wasn't good at words, but he also wasn't the kind of man who lied. Finally, he said softly, "Because with you, I don't feel alone." Mirab's heart skipped. She had expected a casual reply, maybe even a joke. But this felt different. She laughed nervously, trying to lighten the moment. "Wow, Armand, that almost sounded like. Like what?" he asked, his gaze steady. She bit her lip, then whispered, "Like love." The silence that followed was heavier than the wind around them. Armand's eyes didn't leave hers. He hadn't planned to say it, not today, not like this. But sometimes, hearts don't follow plans. "Yes," he finally said, his voice firm yet vulnerable. "It is love." Mirab froze. For the first time in her life, words failed her. She searched his face, expecting him to smile and say it was a joke. But Armand's eyes held nothing but truth. He leaned slightly closer, his tone low but sincere. "I don't know how or when it happened, Mirab. All I know is, when you're around, my world feels complete. And when you're not, it feels empty." Tears pricked her eyes, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming wave of emotions she didn't know how to handle. She whispered, almost inaudibly, "Armand, I don't know what to say." "Say what your heart feels," he urged gently. Her lips trembled, her chest rising and falling. And then, with a nervous smile, she said, "I feel safe with you, like I've known you forever. Maybe that's what love is, right?" Armand's usually stoic face softened. He didn't smile often, but in that moment, he did. A smile that reached his eyes. And for the first time, beneath the orange sky and the whispering wind, their hearts spoke louder than their fears. Mirab lowered her gaze, her cheeks red, while Armand sat beside her in silence. But it wasn't an awkward silence. It was the kind of silence where two souls knew they had just found something rare. That night, neither of them slept. Armand replayed her words again and again. Mirab hugged her pillow, smiling through tears she couldn't explain. It wasn't just friendship anymore. It was love, pure, unspoken, yet finally confessed. But they had no idea that love, no matter how strong, was about to be tested in ways they never imagined. It was a breezy evening on campus. The sky had just turned orange, and the wind carried the faint scent of rain. Students were scattered around, some chatting, some rushing to hostels. Armand and Mirab were walking toward the old banyan tree, their usual spot. Mirab had been quieter than usual all day, which was strange. Armand noticed it but didn't ask right away. He never forced her words. Finally, as they sat down, Mirab looked at him, her eyes searching. "Armand," she began, hesitating, "can I ask you something personal?" He glanced at her, curious. "You always do." She took a deep breath. "Why do you spend so much time with me? I mean, you're not exactly the friendly type. You don't talk to anyone else this much. Armon was silent for a long moment. His fingers played with a fallen leaf on the ground. He wasn't good at words, but he also wasn't the kind of man who lied. Finally, he said softly, "Because with you, I don't feel alone." Mirab's heart skipped. She had expected a casual reply, maybe even a joke. But this felt different. She laughed nervously, trying to lighten the moment. "Wow, Armon, that almost sounded like what?" he asked, his gaze steady. She bit her lip, then whispered, "Like love." The silence that followed was heavier than the wind around them. Armon's eyes didn't leave hers. He hadn't planned to say it, not today, not like this. But sometimes, hearts don't follow plans. "Yes," he finally said, his voice firm yet vulnerable. "It is love." Mirab froze. For the first time in her life, words failed her. She searched his face, expecting him to smile and say it was a joke. But Armon's eyes held nothing but truth. He leaned slightly closer, his tone low but sincere. "I don't know how or when it happened, Mirab. All I know is, when you're around, my world feels complete. And when you're not, it feels empty." Tears pricked her eyes, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming wave of emotions she didn't know how to handle. She whispered, almost inaudibly, "Armon, I don't know what to say." "Say what your heart feels," he urged gently. Her lips trembled, her chest rising and falling. And then, with a nervous smile, she said, "I feel safe with you, like I've known you forever. Maybe that's what love is, right?" Armon's usually stoic face softened. He didn't smile often, but in that moment, he did. A smile that reached his eyes. And for the first time, beneath the orange sky and the whispering wind, their hearts spoke louder than their fears. Mirab lowered her gaze, her cheeks red, while Armon sat beside her in silence. But it wasn't an awkward silence. It was the kind of silence where two souls knew they had just found something rare. That night, neither of them slept. Armon replayed her words again and again. Mirab hugged her pillow, smiling through tears she couldn't explain. It wasn't just friendship anymore. It was love, pure, unspoken, yet finally confessed. But they had no idea that love, no matter how strong, was about to be tested in ways they never imagined. For a few weeks after their confession, life felt like a dream. Mirab and Armon's days were painted with colors of love, small glances during lectures, whispered conversations in the library, stolen moments in the canteen. Mirab would tease him endlessly. "Mr. Silent, I never thought you'd be the romantic type." Armon would shake his head, smiling faintly. "I'm not. You just bring it out of me." It was young love, raw and pure. But life doesn't let happiness remain untouched for long. One evening, Mirab returned home after meeting Armon. She walked into the living room to find her parents sitting seriously, her mother's face stiff, her father holding a letter. "Mirab," her father began, "we have something to tell you." Her heart sank. "What is it, Barbara?" Her mother spoke sharply, "Your cousin from London has sent a proposal. He's well settled, educated, belongs to our family. We've said yes." Mirab froze. "You, what?" Her father sighed. "This is the best future for you. We know what's right." Mirab's throat went dry. Her mind screamed Armon's name, but her lips stayed sealed. She wanted to protest, to tell them about the man she loved. But fear gripped her, fear of rejection, fear of hurting her parents, fear of losing the fragile bond she had with them. So she nodded quietly, tears burning her eyes, and ran to her room. That night, Armon called her. His voice was calm, but his heart was eager, as it always was when he spoke to her. "You sound upset," he said, noticing her silence. Mirab forced a smile through her voice. "Just tired. Too much studying." Armon didn't press further. He trusted her words. But somewhere, a small unease crept into his chest. Mirab, on the other hand, buried her face in her pillow and cried silently. She wanted to scream her truth to him, to tell him what was happening. But she couldn't. Not yet. She told herself, maybe it will go away. Maybe I'll find a way to fix it before he ever knows. But love doesn't survive well on silence. Secrets, even small ones, have a way of growing into storms. The next few days, Mirab acted normal around Armon. She laughed, she teased, she held his hand when no one was looking. But every time her phone buzzed with a call from her family, her smile faded. Armon noticed the changes. Her laughter wasn't as carefree anymore. Her eyes carried a hidden weight. One evening, as they walked under the same banyan tree, he finally asked, "Mirab, is something bothering you?" She looked away quickly. "No, nothing at all." Armon studied her face. He wanted to believe her, but his heart told him otherwise. Still, he chose silence. He chose trust. What he didn't know was that Mirab was fighting a storm at home, and by keeping him in the dark, she was unknowingly pushing him closer to heartbreak. That night, standing at her balcony, Mirab looked at the stars. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she whispered to herself, "Armon, I promised I'd never leave you, but what if I don't have a choice?" The stars blinked silently, offering no answers. And somewhere across the city, Armon lay awake, restless, sensing that the love he had just found was already slipping into shadows. It was a cool night on campus. The semester had just ended, and most students were celebrating, their laughter echoing across the lawns. But Armon and Mirab had slipped away quietly, like they always did, seeking their favorite spot, the old banyan tree. The sky above was scattered with stars, a silver moon casting soft light over them. Mirab leaned back against the tree trunk, hugging her knees, her eyes lost in the sky. Armon sat beside her, calm as ever, though his gaze wasn't on the stars, it was on her. She broke the silence first. "Do you ever wonder," she asked softly, "if the stars can actually hear us? Like, maybe they carry our secrets to God?" Armon tilted his head. "Maybe. Why?" Mirab smiled faintly. "Because sometimes I tell them things I can't tell anyone else." Armon studied her for a long moment. He could sense the hidden weight in her voice, but instead of asking, he said gently, "Then tonight, tell them about us." Mirab turned to him, her heart aching and beating fast all at once. "About us?" "Yes," he said firmly. "Tell them that no matter what happens, we'll always find our way back to each other." Her eyes softened. For a moment, the burden of her parents' decision, her family's pressure, everything melted away. She looked at him and whispered, "And what if the world tries to take that away from us?" Armon reached for her hand, holding it tightly. His voice was steady, his words like a vow carved in stone. "Then I'll fight the world. I don't care how big the storm is, Mirab. I've lived enough years in silence. I won't let anyone steal you from me." Her eyes welled up. She leaned her head against his shoulder, whispering, "Promise me, Armon, promise me you'll never let go." "I promise," he said, without hesitation. The stars glittered above as if sealing their vow. But deep inside, Mirab's heart trembled. She wanted to believe his promise, to believe love could conquer everything. Yet, she knew her parents, her family's expectations, their rigid pride. Still, for that moment, she allowed herself to dream. To imagine a life where love was enough, where Armon's hand would never leave hers. Later that night, as they walked back, Armon suddenly stopped. He turned to her, his eyes unwavering. "No matter what happens, Mirab," he said, "never hide from me. Whatever it is, we'll face it together." Her lips parted, but no words came. She wanted to tell him everything, the proposal, her parents' plans, her silent fear. But instead, she forced a smile and whispered, "Always." Armon believed her. Mirab lied to herself. That night, she stood at her window again, staring at the same stars. Her heart was heavy with guilt. "Forgive me, Armon," she whispered. "I couldn't tell you today, but one day, I'll have to." And in his room, Armon lay awake, his chest filled with warmth. For the first time in years, he felt like life had given him something worth living for. He didn't know the battle waiting for him. He didn't know the storm was already on its way. All he knew was one thing, he had promised under the stars. And Armon was not a man who broke promises. The days that followed their promises under the stars should have been golden. But life has a way of testing even the most beautiful vows. Mirab's home had become a battlefield she didn't ask for. Her parents spoke of her cousin almost every evening, his wealth, his success, his perfect match for her. The walls of her house echoed with expectations she couldn't escape. One evening, her father said firmly, "Mirab, stop wasting time. We will announce your engagement soon. Enough of these university childishness." Her chest tightened. She wanted to shout, to tell him about Armand, about the man who held her heart. But fear gripped her throat. Her father's authority was not one she could easily defy. At university, Armand noticed the change. She still smiled, but her laughter was different now, shorter, forced. She still held his hand, but sometimes she pulled away too quickly. Her eyes often looked far away, as if carrying a secret she couldn't share. One afternoon, as they sat in the library, Armand leaned closer. "Mirab," he said quietly, "you're not yourself these days. What's going on?" Mirab blinked quickly, forcing a laugh. "Nothing. Just exams, you know. Stress." Armand's eyes searched hers. He wanted to believe her words, but her trembling hands told another story. A few days later, he saw it, the moment that cracked his heart. Mirab was standing near the canteen, talking to her cousin who had come to pick her up. Armand didn't know who the man was at first, but he saw the way her father greeted him warmly, the way Mirab stood silently, eyes lowered. Armand stood at a distance, his chest heavy. The scene felt wrong. It wasn't jealousy, it was the sinking fear that something was slipping out of his control. That night, he called her. "Mirab," he said firmly, "I saw you today. With that man. Who is he?" Mirab's heart raced. For a moment, she almost told him the truth. Almost. But fear won again. He's just a cousin. Nothing important. Armand was silent for a long moment. Then he asked softly, "Mirab, are you hiding something from me?" Her eyes welled up as she whispered, "No, Armand. I would never." But when she ended the call, her tears betrayed her words. She had lied again. Armand sat in his room that night, restless. His heart trusted her, but his instincts screamed otherwise. He wanted to shake away the doubts, to believe in their promises under the stars. Yet, deep inside, a crack had formed. And cracks, no matter how small, always spread. Mirab's world had turned into a tug-of-war. On one side was her family, pulling her toward a life she didn't want. On the other side was Armand, her safe place, her love, her home. But caught between them, she chose silence. Every time she met Armand, she wore a smile. But behind that smile was a heart full of fear. She couldn't tell him the truth, not because she didn't trust him, but because she was terrified of losing him. What if he couldn't fight her family? What if love wasn't enough? What if their promises under the stars broke under the weight of reality? So, she stayed quiet. Armand, however, wasn't blind. He noticed everything, the way her eyes avoided his, the way her laughter felt shorter, the way she checked her phone nervously every time it buzzed. One evening, he finally said, "Mirab, you're slipping away from me." She looked up quickly, shocked. "No, I'm not. Armand, you're imagining things." But her trembling voice betrayed her. Armand sighed, his jaw tight. "You promised you'd never hide from me. Then why does it feel like you are?" Mirab's lips parted, but no words came. Instead, she whispered, "Just trust me, Armand. Please." And he did. Against his better judgment, he chose trust. But trust without truth is a fragile thing. The storm broke a few days later. Armand was leaving the campus when he saw Mirab again, this time with her cousin. The man was speaking confidently to her, her father standing proudly beside him. And Mirab. Mirab stood there silently, her hands clenched, her eyes lowered. Armand's chest tightened. His mind screamed at him to believe her, to believe that she was being forced. But his heart was breaking with the silence she had wrapped herself in. That night, he couldn't hold it in anymore. He called her. His voice was sharp, pained. "Mirab, tell me the truth. Who is he? And why are you with him again?" Her silence on the other end felt like knives. "Mirab, answer me." Armand's voice cracked. "Are you hiding something from me?" Mirab's tears flowed silently. She wanted to say everything, that she loved him, that she was trapped, that she was fighting inside. But the fear of breaking his heart with the reality made her choose the easier path. It's nothing, Armon. You're overthinking. Overthinking. The word shattered him. That night, Armon sat on his bed, staring at the ceiling. His hands trembled with anger, confusion, and pain. He whispered to himself, "Why can't she just tell me? Why does it feel like she's slipping through my fingers?" And Mirab, in her room, cried herself to sleep, whispering, "I'm sorry, Armon. I'm sorry I can't tell you, not yet." But silence has a cost. And the more she stayed silent, the louder the distance between them grew. It had been 3 days since Armon last spoke to Mirab properly. His calls had become shorter, his voice colder. He was a man who never demanded much from life, but from her, he only asked for honesty. And he felt he wasn't getting it. Mirab, on the other hand, was drowning in fear. Every night her parents spoke about her cousin, about engagement dates, about family honor. Every time, she wanted to scream Armon's name, to tell them she already belonged to someone else. But the words stuck in her throat. Her silence was killing her, and killing him. Finally, Armon couldn't bear it anymore. He asked to meet her near the old banyan tree, their place, their beginning. Mirab arrived, her face pale, her eyes tired. Armon was already there, waiting, his jaw tense, his hands clenched. "Mirab," he began, his voice low but heavy, "enough of this. I need the truth. Who is that man? Why are you always with him? And why do you keep pushing me away?" Mirab's eyes filled instantly. "Armon, it's not what you think. Please, just." "Then what is it?" His voice cracked. "Because from where I stand, it looks like you're slipping into someone else's life, while I'm standing here like a fool." Mirab's tears spilled. "I'm not. I swear, I'm not. I can't explain everything right now." Armon's pain twisted into anger. "You can't explain. Or you won't explain. Do you even trust me, Mirab?" Her lips trembled. "I do, more than anyone. But I can't lose my family, Armon. They won't accept us." The words hit him like stones. "So that's it. You'll let them decide your life? You'll throw away everything we built because of what they'll say?" Mirab sobbed. "It's not that simple." "It is that simple." Armon cut her off, his voice breaking. "Either you fight for us, or you let me go." The silence that followed was unbearable. Mirab's chest rose and fell as she whispered, barely audible, Maybe we were never meant to be." Armon froze. The world around him seemed to collapse. Those words, spoken through her tears, pierced deeper than any knife. He stared at her, eyes burning. "Do you even know what you just said?" Mirab broke down, covering her face. "I don't mean it. I don't, but I don't know what else to do, Armon." Armon took a step back, his heart shattering. "You don't have to say anything else. I understand." His voice was calm, but it carried the weight of 1,000 storms. Without another word, he turned and walked away, leaving Mirab trembling under the tree, her sobs echoing into the night. That night, Armon sat in darkness, replaying every moment, every promise, every smile. And all he could hear was her voice whispering, "Maybe we were never meant to be." And Mirab? She lay curled in her bed, choking on her sobs, hating herself for the words she never wanted to say but couldn't stop from spilling. Sometimes, love doesn't break with distance. It breaks with silence. And theirs had just cracked wide open. The days after their fight were unbearable. Armon stopped coming to campus. His friends noticed his absence, but no one dared to ask. He had always been quiet, but now his silence was darker, like a man who had lost the only light in his life. Mirab, on the other hand, came every day, but her laughter was gone. Her eyes searched every corner, hoping for a glimpse of him. But Armon had vanished. And then, one evening, her father made the announcement at dinner. "The engagement will be next week. Mirab, prepare yourself. No arguments." The spoon in her hand dropped. Her heart pounded in her chest. "Abu, please. I'm not ready." Her father's eyes hardened. "Enough. This is final." Her mother placed a hand on hers gently, but her words were no softer. "This is best for you, Mirab. You'll understand later." Mirab excused herself and ran to her room, tears streaming down her face. She clutched her phone, staring at Armand's number. Her thumb hovered over the call button, desperate to hear his voice, to beg him not to give up. But she didn't press it. Because in her mind echoed his last words, "Either you fight for us, or you let me go." And she had let him go. Armand, meanwhile, was packing his bags. His uncle, who lived in another city, had offered him a small job. It wasn't much, but it was far away. Far enough to erase the streets, the classrooms, the banyan tree that carried her memories. Before leaving, he sat at his desk, staring at a small notebook. It was filled with sketches and little notes, smiles he had captured, moments he had written down. At the last page, he wrote with trembling hands. "Some promises are written under stars. Maybe mine was only meant to fade with them." He closed the notebook, placed it in his bag, and walked out without looking back. The engagement night arrived. The house was decorated with lights, relatives filled the rooms with chatter, and music played softly. Mirab sat in her room, dressed in heavy clothes and jewelry that felt like chains. Her reflection in the mirror was unrecognizable, a bride-to-be, but not in love. Her cousin knocked on the door gently and said with a smile, "Mirab, everyone is waiting." She forced a smile in return, but her eyes betrayed her. As she stepped out, her heart screamed only one name: Armand. But Armand was gone. That night, as the rings were exchanged, Mirab's tears were hidden behind her lowered gaze. To the world, it was a celebration. To her, it was a funeral, the burial of the love she couldn't protect. And far away, in another city, Armand stood by his window, staring at the stars. For the first time, he didn't speak to them. He just let the silence consume him. Because some silences speak louder than words. Months turned into years, and life moved forward, at least on the outside. Mirab's engagement eventually turned into marriage. The ceremonies were grand, the photographs perfect, the smiles practiced. But inside, Mirab carried a silence that even her husband couldn't break. Her cousin-turned-husband, Harris, was not cruel. In fact, he tried in his own way to be good to her. But kindness cannot replace love. And Mirab, no matter how much she tried, could not give her heart where it didn't belong. Her eyes often lingered on the stars at night. Sometimes, Harris caught her lost in thought and asked, "What are you always looking at, Mirab?" She would force a smile and whisper, "Nothing, just the sky." But deep down, she was searching for a promise made long ago under those same stars. Armand, in the other city, built his life from scratch. The small job became a stable one, and slowly, he started earning respect. To the world, he was hard-working, disciplined, and silent. But inside, he was a man living with half a soul. He avoided gatherings, avoided laughter, avoided the kind of love that reminded him of her. His friends tried to set him up, but he always refused politely. "Not interested," he would say, ending the conversation quickly. At night, however, the silence returned. He often opened that old notebook, the one filled with sketches and notes of her. He never added anything new to it. He just reread. Sometimes, his hands hovered over his phone, tempted to call her, just to hear her voice. But he never did. Because he believed she had chosen her life, chosen silence over him. And Armand was a man who never begged for what wasn't his anymore. Years passed. Mirab and Armand, though far apart, carried each other like invisible scars. Their days moved forward, their worlds changed, but inside, they remained frozen in that night of separation. And fate, silent, patient, and mysterious, watched them both. Because sometimes, life isn't about moving on. Sometimes, it's about crossing paths again when you least expect it. It had been almost 5 years. 5 years since the banyan tree. 5 years since promises under the stars. 5 years since silence tore them apart. Life had changed for both, yet in their hearts, time had stood still. One rainy afternoon, Armand sat in his office. By now, he had climbed up the ladder, respected by his colleagues for his discipline and honesty. But even with success, his eyes carried a sadness no achievement could erase. His boss walked in, clapping his shoulder. "Armand, I need you to attend a charity gala tonight. Big clients, important connections. You're the right man to represent us. Armand disliked such events, but he nodded quietly. He had learned to say yes to responsibilities. That evening, dressed in a simple black suit, he walked into the glittering hall. Music floated softly, laughter filled the air, and chandeliers lit up the room. But Armand felt out of place, as always. Until his eyes froze. Across the hall, in a pastel silk dress, stood Mirab. Her hair was tied elegantly, her smile polite as she greeted people. To anyone else, she looked like a picture-perfect wife, standing beside Harris, her husband, who was busy speaking with other businessmen. But to Armand, she was still Mirab, the girl who once cried under the stars, the girl whose silence broke him, the girl he had never stopped loving. His chest tightened. For a moment, the years vanished, and it was just her. Mirab's eyes wandered across the room, until they landed on him. The glass in her hand nearly slipped. Her heart skipped a beat, her breath caught in her throat. For a second, she thought she was imagining it. But no, it was him. Armand. The same eyes, the same silence, the same storm. Only older now, sharper, heavier. They didn't move. They just stared across the crowd, frozen, as if the entire world had disappeared. Memories flooded back, their first smiles, their promises, their fight, their heartbreak. Everything rushed in with unbearable force. Harris's voice broke the moment. Mirab, are you all right? She blinked quickly, nodding. Yes, I'm fine. But her trembling hands betrayed her. Armand turned away, trying to steady himself, but his heart was pounding. He hadn't prepared for this. He thought he had buried her memory deep enough to survive. But one look, and the cracks were wide open again. Later that night, as the event slowed, Mirab found herself standing near the balcony, away from the noise. The rain outside matched the storm inside her. And then, she felt it. A presence behind her. She turned. Armand stood there. For the first time in years, their eyes met without barriers. No family, no crowd, no excuses. Just them. Her lips parted, but no words came. His jaw tightened, as if fighting 1,000 emotions at once. Finally, he spoke, his voice low, steady, but filled with pain. Mirab. Her eyes welled up instantly. She whispered, almost broken. Armand. And in that one moment, the years of silence dissolved. The love, the pain, the promises, the heartbreak, everything was alive again. But neither knew whether fate had brought them back to heal, or to hurt again. The balcony was dimly lit, the sound of rain outside muffled by the glass. Inside the hall, people laughed and music played, but here, it felt like the world had stopped. Mirab and Armand stood a few feet apart, staring at each other as if they were both afraid to blink, afraid that the other might vanish. For a long moment, silence ruled. Only their hearts spoke, racing wildly. Finally, Armand's voice broke through. Low, steady, trembling with control. 5 years, Mirab, and still, it feels like yesterday. Her throat tightened. She opened her mouth, but no sound came. Tears pooled in her eyes. Armand took a slow step closer, his gaze unwavering. Why, Mirab? Why didn't you fight? You could have told me. You could have trusted me. Her tears slipped down. Armand, I wanted to. Every single day, I wanted to. But, my father, my family. He cut her off, his voice sharp with pain. So you chose silence. Mirab's hands trembled. I chose them, because I was scared. Scared of losing you to their anger. Scared of destroying your life if you stood against them. So I let you go. Armand's chest heaved. His hands clenched into fists. You think letting me go saved me? Mirab, it destroyed me. I could have fought anything, anyone, but I couldn't fight your silence. Her sob escaped, raw and broken. She whispered, I know, and I've hated myself for it every single day. The rain outside grew heavier, matching the storm in their hearts. Mirab took a hesitant step toward him. Armand, I never stopped loving you. His breath caught. For years, he had dreamed of hearing those words again. But now, They hurt more than they healed. He looked away, his voice bitter. And yet, you wear another man's ring. Mirab lowered her gaze, tears dripping onto her hands. It was never love, Armon. Harris is good, but he's not you. My heart, my soul, they stayed with you. Armon's eyes burned, torn between anger and longing. His voice dropped to a whisper. Then why are you still with him? Mirab closed her eyes, whispering like a confession. Because some cages don't have locks. They're built from duty, family, and guilt. And I don't know how to break free. Armon turned away, staring at the rain, his jaw tight. His silence was louder than any scream. Mirab reached out, her hand almost touching his arm, but she stopped halfway. Armon, please say something. Anything. Even if it's anger. Don't give me silence again. He turned back, his eyes glistening. His voice cracked as he whispered. Silence is all I have left, Mirab. Because if I speak my heart, I'll take you away tonight. Her breath hitched. For a second, her soul screamed yes. But then, duty and fear tightened their grip around her again. And so they stood, love burning, yet caged. A voice from inside the hall called, Mirab, where are you? She wiped her tears quickly, forcing her breathing steady. Her lips trembled as she whispered, I have to go. Armon's eyes locked onto hers, desperate, pained. Mirab. She gave him one last look, a look heavy with love, regret, and longing, before turning away. And as she walked back into the glittering hall, Armon stayed behind, fists clenched, his heart screaming silently into the rain. After that night on the balcony, both Armon and Mirab tried to bury the storm. Tried, but failed. The charity gala ended, but their hearts didn't. Something had awakened again, something too strong to silence. The next week, Armon received a call from his boss. We've finalized a collaboration deal. The client you met at the gala, Harris Malik, wants to work closely with us. I want you to lead this project, Armon. Armon froze. Harris. Mirab's husband. Fate wasn't giving him distance. Fate was pushing him closer. He wanted to refuse, but professionalism chained him. With a stiff breath, he said, Yes, sir. The first meeting was at Harris's company. Armon walked into the sleek glass office, his heart heavy. Harris greeted him warmly, shaking his hand. Armon, my wife mentioned she had seen you at the gala. Small world, isn't it? Armon forced a polite smile. Yes, small world. As he sat, his eyes wandered, almost involuntarily. And there she was. Mirab, entering the room with a tray of tea. Her eyes widened for a second, then quickly softened. To Harris, it was nothing. To them, it was everything. Their gazes met, fleeting, trembling, saying everything they couldn't out loud. The days that followed were torture. Meetings, dinners, discussions, and in every corner, stolen glances. Mirab tried to stay composed, but every time Armon spoke, her heart tightened. Every time his eyes accidentally met hers, she felt the world vanish. One evening, after a late meeting, Harris insisted, Armon, have dinner with us. Mirab cooks well. You shouldn't miss it. Armon hesitated, but refusing would raise suspicion. So he agreed. At the dining table, Harris chatted cheerfully about business, completely unaware of the undercurrent. Mirab served the food silently, her hands trembling slightly when she placed a plate before Armon. Their fingers brushed. Just for a second. But it was enough to send a shiver down both their spines. Armon looked up, his eyes locking onto hers. Mirab quickly looked away, hiding the storm in her chest. That night, after Armon left, Harris smiled at his wife. He's a good man, Mirab. Serious, but trustworthy. You seemed surprised when you saw him at the gala. Did you know him before? Mirab's heart skipped. Her throat went dry. She forced a smile. Just from university. Nothing more. Harris nodded, satisfied. But somewhere deep inside, Mirab knew her silence was once again building a dangerous wall. And Armon? He walked home that night, fists clenched, heart on fire. He had sworn he would never steal what wasn't his. But how do you silence love that was once your entire world? As he stared at the night sky, he whispered bitterly, "Why, Mirab, why does fate keep bringing me back to you?" In the quiet of her room, Mirab looked at the same stars, whispering through her tears. Because some bonds, Armon, were never meant to break. It was late evening when Armon stayed back at Harris's office for finalizing some reports. The building had grown quiet, most of the staff gone. Rain pattered softly against the glass windows, the world outside a blur of silver streaks. Harris had left early for another meeting, leaving Armon to wrap things up. Armon was glad for the silence, until he heard the soft click of the door. He looked up. Mirab stood there, holding a file. Her dupatta draped lightly, her eyes hesitant, almost guilty. "Harris asked me to give you these documents," she said quietly, placing the file on the desk. Armon nodded, his voice stiff. "Thank you." She turned to leave, but paused. Her hand lingered on the door handle, trembling. She closed her eyes for a moment, then turned back. Their eyes met. And just like that, the silence broke. "Armon," she whispered, her voice cracking. His chest tightened. "Mirab, don't." But her tears betrayed her restraint. She stepped closer, her words tumbling out like a confession long buried. "I can't do this anymore, pretending like we're strangers. Every time I see you, I feel like I'm dying inside. Do you think it's easy for me?" Armon stood, his hands trembling, his jaw tight. "Then why are you still here, Mirab? Why didn't you fight back then? Why didn't you fight for us?" Her tears flowed. "Because I was weak. Because I was scared. But Armon, not a single day has gone by where I didn't love you." The words broke him. He had dreamed of hearing them again, yet now they hurt more than anything. He took a step closer, his voice rough. "Mirab, don't say this. You're someone else's wife now. These words will destroy us." She shook her head desperately. "It's already destroying me." They stood so close now that he could feel her breath, see the trembling of her lips, hear the racing of her heart. The years of distance, the silence, the longing, it all came crashing down in that one moment. His hands hovered, aching to hold her, aching to remind himself she was still real. Her eyes closed, as if silently begging him to. But Armon pulled back, his fists clenching. His voice was hoarse, torn between love and restraint. "No, Mirab, if I touch you now, I won't be able to stop. And if that happens, we'll cross a line we can't return from." Mirab's tears spilled freely. "Then at least tell me you still love me, even if it's just once." Armon's eyes burned as he whispered, almost breaking. "More than forever." The silence that followed was unbearable. Their hearts screamed for each other, but their souls were trapped in chains they couldn't break. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed in the corridor. Voices, staff returning for something they'd forgotten. Mirab quickly stepped back, wiping her tears. Armon turned toward the desk, pretending to flip through papers. The door opened. A junior employee peeked in. "Sir, do you need anything else before we lock up?" Armon shook his head calmly. "No, thank you." The boy nodded and left. For a moment, the world felt normal again. But inside, both hearts were shattered, trembling, burning with what almost happened. Mirab whispered, her voice barely audible. "One day, Armon, this silence will kill us both." And with that, she left. Armon stood there alone, his chest heaving, whispering to himself. "It already is." The days after that night in the office were unbearable. Mirab avoided looking at Armon during meetings, afraid that her eyes would betray her. Armon buried himself in work, keeping his tone clipped and professional, his heart locked behind walls. But love cannot be hidden forever. One evening, Harris invited Armon again for dinner. "You've been working so hard," Harris said warmly. "You're like family now." Mirab set an extra plate. Mirab's heart skipped. Armon tried to refuse, but Harris insisted. And so, once again, fate placed them under the same roof. The dinner was simple. Harris talked about business, his laughter filling the room. Armon listened quietly, nodding, responding briefly. But his eyes, no matter how much he tried, drifted toward Mirab. And she moved carefully, avoiding his gaze, her hands trembling slightly as she poured water into his glass. It was a small thing, but Harris noticed. Later that night, as they cleared the table, Harris casually asked his wife, "You've been quiet these days. Is everything all right?" Mirab stiffened, forcing a smile. "Yes, just tired." Harris studied her for a moment longer than usual, then let it go. But a seed of doubt had been planted. The next morning, Harris walked into the office earlier than usual. As he approached the conference room, he overheard voices. Mirab's voice. Armon's voice. He stopped, hidden by the doorframe, listening. Inside, Mirab was placing files on the table. She whispered, her voice low, pained. "Armon, we can't keep doing this. It's tearing me apart." Armon's reply came, equally low, his voice strained. "Then tell me, Mirab, what do you want? Because if you say the word, I'll walk away forever. But if you don't." Her silence lingered, heavy. Harris's chest tightened. He stepped back before either of them noticed, his jaw tense. He said nothing, but his mind began to swirl with suspicion. That night, Harris asked casually at home, "So, you and Armon, you were friends in university, right?" Mirab's spoon froze halfway to her lips. She nodded quickly. "Yes, just classmates." Harris smiled faintly, but his eyes stayed sharp. "Strange. I never heard you mention him before." Mirab's heart pounded. She lowered her gaze, whispering, "We lost touch. That's all." But Harris's instincts told him otherwise. Meanwhile, Armon sat alone in his apartment, replaying her words, "It's tearing me apart." His fists clenched as he whispered, "It's tearing me apart too, Mirab, but how long before the world sees it?" And outside, fate was already moving its pieces. Because secrets don't stay secrets forever. Harris was not the kind of man to show suspicion openly. He smiled, he laughed, he carried on as though nothing was wrong. But inside, his mind had turned into a battlefield of questions. The way Mirab lowered her eyes when Armon entered the room. The way Armon's voice grew taut whenever her name slipped into a conversation. The silence, heavier than words. Something wasn't right. Harris felt it in his bones. At first, he told himself he was imagining it. Mirab was his wife. She had never given him reason to doubt her. And Armon, well, he was a decent man. Too decent to. But the thought lingered like a shadow. One night, Harris lay awake in bed while Mirab slept beside him. He turned to look at her face, peaceful, yet troubled in her dreams. A tear slipped down her cheek even in sleep. Harris's heart clenched. What pain is she carrying that she never shares with me? The next day at work, Harris decided to test things subtly. He called Armon into his office. "Armon, I was thinking, you've been handling this project so well. Maybe we should celebrate tonight. Come over for dinner, but this time, just the two of us. Mirab won't mind." Armon hesitated. He could feel something underneath Harris's tone, too casual, too deliberate. But he nodded. Of course. That evening, Harris poured 2 glasses of wine. He raised his glass. "To friendship," he said. Armon raised his too, forcing a smile. "To friendship." But Harris didn't let it go. He leaned back, studying him. "Tell me something, Armon, did you ever fall in love in university?" The question struck like a blade. Armon froze for a second too long before composing himself. "Everyone does at that age, don't they?" he said lightly. Harris smiled, swirling his glass. "True. And some loves stay forever, even if they're hidden." Armon's jaw tightened. He set his glass down, his voice firm. "Some loves don't survive reality." Their eyes met across the table, an unspoken duel, both men guarding secrets, both testing boundaries. At home later, Harris watched Mirab closely. She was folding laundry, humming softly to distract herself. "Mirab," he said suddenly, "do you ever think about your university days?" She looked up, startled. "Sometimes. Why?" He smiled faintly. "No reason. Just curious." But as she turned away, Harris noticed her hands tremble, a handkerchief slipping from her fingers. He picked it up, placed it in her palm, and held her hand a moment longer than usual. His eyes searched hers. "You know you can tell me anything, right?" Mirab forced a smile. "Of course." But inside, she was suffocating. Because the truth was burning her alive, and Harris was circling closer every day. Meanwhile, Armand sat in his apartment, pacing like a caged lion. He replayed Harris's words, his probing questions. "He knows something, he's watching me." Armand ran a hand through his hair, whispering bitterly. "If the truth comes out, it won't just destroy me, it will destroy her." And for the first time, he wondered. Should he walk away before it was too late? Mirab hadn't meant to meet Armand that day. She had told herself over and over, no more private moments. No more weakness. But fate is cruel. It was a rainy afternoon. Harris had gone out for a sudden client meeting. Mirab, restless at home, wandered into the study to return some files. And there he was, Armand, standing by the window, going through papers Harris had left behind. They both froze. "Armand, you're here." Her voice trembled. He turned, equally unsettled. "Harris asked me to pick up these reports before his meeting." Silence stretched between them. The sound of rain hitting the windows filled the room, echoing the storm inside their hearts. Mirab stepped closer, unable to stop herself. Her eyes glistened. "Armand, this is killing me. Every day, pretending like I don't see you. Every night, living with words unsaid." Armand's fists clenched. His voice was hoarse. "Then tell me to leave, Mirab. Tell me to walk away. One word from you, and I'll disappear forever." Her lips quivered. She wanted to say it. She wanted to end this torment. But instead, tears slipped down her cheeks as she whispered, "And if I don't?" Armand's chest tightened. He stepped closer, his hand lifting instinctively to wipe her tears. For a heartbeat, it was just them, two broken souls caught between love and destruction. And then, the sound of footsteps echoed in the hallway. Both froze. "Mirab." Harris's voice rang out, closer now. Mirab stepped back instantly, her heart pounding in her chest. Armand turned toward the desk, pretending to scan the documents. The door opened. Harris entered, slightly surprised. "Oh, Armand, you're here." Armand gave a stiff nod. "Yes. I came for the reports." Harris's eyes flicked between them. Mirab's flushed cheeks, her trembling hands, Armand's tense posture. Something felt wrong. "Everything okay?" Harris asked slowly. "Of course," Mirab replied quickly, forcing a smile. "I was just bringing tea." Harris's gaze lingered on her for a moment too long before he smiled faintly. "Good. Then bring 3 cups. Let's sit together." Mirab nodded and left the room hurriedly, her legs barely carrying her. As soon as she was gone, Harris turned to Armand. His smile remained, but his eyes sharpened. "You know, Armand," he said casually, "it's strange. Whenever you and Mirab are in the same room, the air feels heavier." Armand's jaw tightened. He met Harris's gaze, steady but burning inside. "Maybe you're imagining it." Harris chuckled softly, but his eyes never left Armand's. "Maybe I am." But deep inside, Harris knew. Something was there, hidden, dangerous, unspoken. And he would find out. Later that night, Mirab sat alone in her room, shaking. They had almost been caught. Just 1 second more, and the truth would have shattered everything. She whispered into the darkness. "Why, Allah, how much longer can we hide this?" And somewhere across the city, Armand looked at the same stormy sky, whispering, "Not forever, Mirab, not forever." Harris had always been observant. In business, it was his strength. At home, it became his weapon. He didn't accuse. He didn't shout. Instead, he watched. Quietly, patiently. And it was in the little things that he began to see the cracks. The way Mirab's voice softened a fraction too much when she said Armand's name. The way Armand avoided her gaze so deliberately, it looked unnatural. The way silence filled the room whenever they were near each other. To outsiders, it was nothing. But to a husband's eyes, it was everything. One evening, Harris returned home earlier than expected. He stepped into the living room silently, unnoticed. And there she was. Mirab stood at the window, holding her phone close to her chest, her face pale, her lips trembling. She whispered softly, "Why does it have to be this way, Amon?" Harris's heart turned to stone. He made a noise with the door so she wouldn't realize he had been there long. She quickly hid her phone and forced a smile. "You're early today." Harris kissed her forehead as if nothing was wrong. But inside, his blood boiled. The next day, Harris invited Amon to lunch. The restaurant was quiet, private. "Haven't had a chance to talk one-on-one for a while," Harris said casually, sipping his tea. "Tell me something, Amon. Do you believe some people are destined for each other?" Amon stiffened but kept his face calm. "I believe destiny is real. But sometimes, people are forced apart, no matter what they feel." Harris's eyes narrowed, his smile sharp. Forced apart, but still, in love. Amon's hand clenched around his glass. For a second, his heart betrayed him, his silence speaking louder than words. Harris noticed. Oh, he noticed. At home that night, Harris didn't say a word to Mirab. He simply observed her, the way she avoided his gaze, the way she seemed lost in thought. Later, as she folded his shirts, Harris asked suddenly, "Mirab, do you love me?" The question struck her like lightning. Her hands froze mid-fold. Her lips parted, but no words came out. After a long silence, she whispered, "Of course I do." But her eyes glistened with unshed tears, and Harris saw the truth she couldn't hide. Mirab lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling. Her chest ached with guilt and longing. This can't go on. One day, Harris will know. And when he does, everything will burn. Meanwhile, Amon sat in his empty apartment, staring at his phone. He typed a message. "Mirab, we need to end this before it destroys us." His finger hovered over the send button. But his heart wouldn't let him press it. Instead, he deleted it and whispered into the night. "Even if it destroys me, I can't let you go again." And somewhere in the silence of the house, Harris stood awake too, his eyes cold, his heart heavy. "They think they can hide this from me. But soon, the truth will come out." The silence could not last forever. Fate had been patient, but now it demanded its due. It happened on a night heavy with thunder. Harris returned home earlier than expected once again. As he entered the living room, his footsteps slowed. There, by the window, stood Mirab, tears streaming down her face. And opposite her, Amon. His voice low, trembling, breaking. "Mirab, I can't do this anymore. Every time I see you, I break a little more. I'd rather leave everything than destroy your life." Her sobs echoed. "But Amon, you were my life." The words struck the air like lightning. Harris froze at the doorway, his heart stopping. His world crumbled in an instant. The silence after her confession was unbearable. Amon's face turned pale, Mirab's eyes widened, because Harris was standing there. His eyes, dark, wounded, blazing with betrayal. "So it's true," Harris whispered. His voice was calm, but it carried the weight of 1,000 storms. All this time, it was him. Mirab fell to her knees, sobbing. "Harris, please." He raised a hand, silencing her. His gaze shifted to Amon. I trusted you. I let you into my home, into my life. And all along, you were stealing my wife." Amon stepped forward, his voice steady though his heart broke. "No, Harris. I never touched her. Never crossed the line. I loved her, but I never betrayed you." Harris's laugh was hollow. "Loved her? Do you even hear yourself?" Mirab clutched Harris's arm, her tears endless. "Please believe me. I tried to bury it. I tried to be yours. But my heart never forgot him." Her words were daggers. Harris staggered back as though struck. "You chose me, Mirab," he said bitterly. "But you never gave me your heart." The storm outside raged. Inside, 3 souls shattered. Finally, Amon broke the silence. His voice was raw, but resolute. "I'll leave. Tonight. Forever. Harris, I swear, I never wanted this. If my presence has brought pain, I'll disappear. Just don't punish her for what her heart couldn't control. Mirab gasped, clutching his hand desperately. No, Armon, don't go. Not again. He gently pulled her fingers away, tears streaming down his face. Mirab, I promised once that I'd love you more than forever. And sometimes, loving someone means walking away so they can survive. Harris turned away, his voice hoarse. Go. Before I lose whatever respect I still have left. Armon's chest heaved. He looked at Mirab one last time, memorizing her face, her tears, her trembling lips. Then, with a broken smile, he whispered, more than forever, Mirab. Always. And he walked out into the storm. Mirab collapsed, her sobs shaking the walls. Harris stood still, shattered, his heart torn between betrayal and pity. The rain outside swallowed Armon, each step heavier than the last. He didn't look back. Because he knew, if he did, he would never find the strength to leave. Years later, people would say Harris Malik lived with wealth but a wounded silence. Mirab became a shadow of the girl she once was, her laughter gone, her eyes always searching the horizon. And Armon? He disappeared from their world, leaving only whispers. But on some nights, when the stars shone bright, Mirab would look up and whisper through her tears. More than forever. And somewhere, perhaps miles away, Armon whispered the same. Broken heart, the story ended not with union, but with sacrifice. Because sometimes, true love doesn't mean having each other, it means carrying each other in the heart, even when the world tears you apart. The silence could not last forever. Fate had been patient, but now it demanded its due. It happened on a night heavy with thunder. Harris returned home earlier than expected once again. As he entered the living room, his footsteps slowed. There, by the window, stood Mirab, tears streaming down her face. And opposite her, Armon. His voice low, trembling, breaking. Mirab, I can't do this anymore. Every time I see you, I break a little more. I'd rather leave everything than destroy your life. Her sobs echoed. But Armon, you were my life. The words struck the air like lightning. Harris froze at the doorway, his heart stopping. His world crumbled in an instant. The silence after her confession was unbearable. Armon's face turned pale, Mirab's eyes widened, because Harris was standing there. His eyes, dark, wounded, blazing with betrayal. So it's true, Harris whispered. His voice was calm, but it carried the weight of 1,000 storms. All this time, it was him. Mirab fell to her knees, sobbing. Harris, please. He raised a hand, silencing her. His gaze shifted to Armon. You. I trusted you. I let you into my home, into my life. And all along, you were stealing my wife. Armon stepped forward, his voice steady though his heart broke. No, Harris. I never touched her. Never crossed the line. I loved her, but I never betrayed you. Harris's laugh was hollow. Loved her? Do you even hear yourself? Mirab clutched Harris's arm, her tears endless. Please believe me. I tried to bury it. I tried to be yours. But my heart never forgot him. Her words were daggers. Harris staggered back as though struck. You chose me, Mirab, he said bitterly. But you never gave me your heart. The storm outside raged. Inside, 3 souls shattered. Finally, Armon broke the silence. His voice was raw, but resolute. I'll leave. Tonight. Forever. Harris, I swear, I never wanted this. If my presence has brought pain, I'll disappear. Just don't punish her for what her heart couldn't control. Mirab gasped, clutching his hand desperately. No, Armon, don't go. Not again. He gently pulled her fingers away, tears streaming down his face. Mirab, I promised once that I'd love you more than forever. And sometimes, loving someone means walking away so they can survive. Harris turned away, his voice hoarse. Go. Before I lose whatever respect I still have left. Armon's chest heaved. He looked at Mirab one last time, memorizing her face, her tears, her trembling lips. Then, with a broken smile, he whispered, "More than forever, Mirab. Always." And he walked out into the storm. Mirab collapsed, her sobs shaking the walls. Harris stood still, shattered, his heart torn between betrayal and pity. The rain outside swallowed Armon, each step heavier than the last. He didn't look back. Because he knew, if he did, he would never find the strength to leave. Years later, people would say Harris Malik lived with wealth but a wounded silence. Mirab became a shadow of the girl she once was, her laughter gone, her eyes always searching the horizon. And Armon? He disappeared from their world, leaving only whispers. But on some nights, when the stars shone bright, Mirab would look up and whisper through her tears, "More than forever." And somewhere, perhaps miles away, Armon whispered the same. Broken Heart, the story ended not with union, but with sacrifice. Because sometimes, true love doesn't mean having each other, it means carrying each other in the heart, even when the world tears you apart.